You blocked your best friend of 10 years. Didn't explain, didn't argue, just gone. Your family thinks something's wrong with you. Your co-workers say you've become distant. Someone who used to know you well told a mutual friend, "It's like they just vanished. I don't even recognize them anymore." And here's the part that would disturb them most. You sleep better now than you have in years. This is the psychology of people who cut everyone off. And if you're watching this, there's a good chance you're either one of them or you're trying to understand someone who is. There's always a moment. Not always dramatic, not always obvious, but there's a specific point where something inside you breaks, or maybe finally heals, and you make a decision that everyone else will call extreme. For some, it's a milestone birthday spent alone because everyone forgot. For others, it's a medical emergency where you realize your phone never rang. For some, it's smaller. The 15th time you shared something vulnerable and got back a distracted, "Wow, that's crazy," before they redirected the conversation to themselves. Whatever it was, something shifted. The cost-benefit analysis you'd been unconsciously running for years finally produced a result you couldn't ignore. These relationships are taking more than they're giving, and it's draining something inside you. So you did what seemed impossible before. You stopped participating entirely. Let's be clear about what we're actually talking about. This isn't taking a break, or needing space, or going through a phase. This is a complete reset. Deleting social media accounts without warning, changing your phone number and not giving it to anyone from your old life, moving cities and not telling a single person where you went, blocking not just individuals but entire friend groups, not responding to emails, texts or calls. Complete severance. From the outside, this looks extreme, irrational, like something must be wrong. And maybe you were breaking down, or maybe you were finally breaking free from something that had been suffocating you so slowly you didn't notice until you couldn't breathe. Here's what's actually happening in the brain of someone who cuts everyone off. Your nervous system has been operating in a state of chronic vigilance for longer than you realized. Not physical danger, social pressure. The constant evaluation. Am I safe with these people? Will they hurt me? Have they already hurt me and I'm just pretending they haven't? Every unanswered vulnerability, every unreciprocated effort, every time you showed up and no one showed up for you, your brain was filing reports. And at some point, your nervous system made an executive decision. These people are not safe. And the only way to feel safe is complete removal. This isn't a rational choice you sit down and think through. It's a survival response activating. Your body shifts into protection mode, and protection mode says, create distance from what causes harm. Everyone starts to feel unsafe. People will assume something is wrong with you. They'll say you're isolating, using clinical language that turns your boundaries into symptoms. But here's what they're missing. When someone withdraws because everything feels meaningless, it looks very different from what's happening here. What you're doing isn't shutting down, it's clarifying. You're stepping back because you finally see the situation clearly. And what you see is that many of these connections were never real to begin with. They were illusions sustained by your effort alone. You're too aware to pretend anymore. You've seen behind the curtain. You've realized that most of your relationships were transactional, performative, or simply habitual. People were in your life because they'd always been there, not because they'd earned their place. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's the trap that keeps most people stuck. Loyalty to people who were never loyal to them. You grew up together. You've known them since college. They were there for your wedding. You've been through so much together. Except, were they really there? Or were they just present? There's a difference between someone attending events in your life and someone actually supporting your life. Between someone texting happy birthday and someone knowing what you're struggling with. Between someone being in the group chat and someone checking on you privately when you go quiet. You stayed loyal to the history. They stayed comfortable with the status quo. And when you finally broke that loyalty, everyone acted like you'd committed a betrayal. But here's the question nobody asks. How many times did they betray you before you left? How many times did they fail to show up and you forgave them and stayed anyway? When you cut everyone off, you're doing something most people are too afraid to do. You're being brutally honest about the quality of your relationships. Most people maintain friendships out of obligation, nostalgia, or fear of confrontation. They keep people around who make them feel bad because they don't know how to end it. They stay in group chats they've muted. They attend events they dread. They perform closeness they don't feel. You stopped performing, and the moment you stopped, the truth became unavoidable. Without your effort, these relationships don't exist. That's not something most people can admit, so they maintain the facade. But you walked away from the stage entirely. Here's what disturbs people most. You're not suffering. They expect you to be miserable, regretful, realizing your mistake and coming back, apologizing. Instead, you're fine, better than fine. There's a lightness to your days now. Your stress levels have dropped. You're sleeping through the night. You've stopped having that recurring anxiety dream about showing up to a party where everyone ignores you, because you're no longer showing up to those parties. The relief is so profound it almost scares you, because it confirms what you suspected. Those relationships weren't adding to your life, they were draining it. And everyone's confusion about your relief just proves they never understood what it cost you to maintain connections with them in the first place. This pattern almost always has roots in early attachment. Maybe you had a parent who was inconsistently available, sometimes warm, sometimes cold, and you never knew which version you'd get. So you learned to be hyper-vigilant about other people's emotional states while neglecting your own. Or maybe you were the parentified child, the one managing everyone else's emotions, keeping the peace, making sure everyone was okay. You learned that your value came from your utility, from what you could do for others. Or maybe you were just ignored, not abused, not neglected in obvious ways, just not seen. Your parents loved you, but they didn't really know you. And you learned that being truly known wasn't something you could expect from relationships. Whatever the origin, you developed a template. I give, they take, and I don't get to need anything in return. And you followed that template for decades until you could no longer carry the weight. In attachment theory terms, what you're experiencing might be extreme avoidant attachment activation. Avoidant attachment develops when you learn that depending on others is unsafe, so you become hyper-independent. You pride yourself on not needing anyone. You create distance before intimacy can develop, because intimacy means vulnerability, and vulnerability has only ever led to disappointment. But most avoidants still maintain surface-level relationships. They keep people at arm's length, but don't eliminate them entirely. What you did is the extreme version. You didn't just create distance, you deleted the entire relationship database. This happens when the pain of maintaining even distant relationships outweighs the fear of complete isolation. When your nervous system decides that being alone is genuinely safer than being adjacent to people who hurt you. People will call you isolated. You know you're protected. Isolation implies something is being done to you. You're cut off from the world involuntarily. You're lonely and suffering. Protection implies agency. You're making an active choice to create a boundary between yourself and harm. You're choosing safety over connection because connection hasn't been safe. This is the part people refuse to understand. You're not running from intimacy. You're running from the specific kind of pseudo-intimacy you've experienced, where people want access to you without actually investing in you. Sometimes you feel something that resembles grief, but it's not grief for the people. It's grief for what you thought those relationships were. You're mourning the friendship you believed you had with someone who, it turns out, barely thought about you. You're mourning the family closeness that was actually just shared trauma and obligation. You're mourning a version of your social life that only existed in your imagination. The people themselves? You don't actually miss them. You miss the idea of them, the role they were supposed to play but never did. And once you separate the fantasy from the reality, the grief dissolves. What's left is just relief. Cutting everyone off forces you to answer a terrifying question. Who are you without these relationships? So much of your identity was built around being someone's friend, someone's child, someone's colleague. You were the funny one, or the reliable one, or the one who always has it together. When you remove all those people, those identities disappear, and for a while, you have no idea who you are. This is the transition period, the space between your old self and whoever you're becoming. Some people panic here and go back. They re-establish contact because not knowing who they are feels worse than being in relationships that hurt them. But if you can sit in this uncomfortable space long enough, something interesting happens. You start discovering who you actually are. Not who you perform being for others, who you are when nobody's watching. Here's the hard part. In your purge, you probably cut off some people who didn't deserve it. There was probably someone in your life who actually cared, who was trying, who would have shown up if you'd given them the chance. But you were so exhausted from giving chances to people who wasted them that you couldn't risk it anymore. So you eliminated everyone, including the exceptions. This is collateral damage, and it's unfortunate, but it's also understandable. When you're at your limit, you stop analysing intentions and focus on getting distance from what hurts. You just get out of the water entirely. Eventually, someone will ask, "Are you going to let anyone in again?" And honestly, you don't know. Right now, the idea of rebuilding your social life feels exhausting. The thought of small talk, of explaining yourself, of slowly building trust only to potentially watch it crumble again, it feels impossible. Maybe one day you'll be ready. Maybe you'll meet someone who makes connection feel safe instead of dangerous. Maybe you'll develop better filtering systems so you can identify safe people earlier. Or maybe you won't. Maybe you'll build a life that's full and meaningful without the traditional relationship structures everyone says you need. People will judge you for this, harshly. They'll say you're damaged, antisocial, unable to maintain relationships. They'll armchair diagnose you with personality disorders. They'll use you as a cautionary tale about what happens when you give up on people. Let them. Their judgment is based on not understanding what you went through. They're evaluating your solution without knowing the problem. They're critiquing your boundary without acknowledging why you needed one this extreme. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't owe anyone access. You don't owe anyone a second chance at hurting you. Cutting everyone off isn't a failure of your ability to connect. It's evidence that you finally valued yourself enough to stop accepting connection that was harming you. It's not giving up on people. It's giving up on forcing relationships that only worked when you were doing all the work. It's not being cold. It's finally feeling warm enough in your own presence that you don't need to stand in other people's proximity pretending it's heat. You're not broken, you're recalibrated. And maybe the most radical act of self-love is knowing when to walk away from everyone who taught you that love was supposed to hurt. You cut everyone off because keeping them was cutting yourself off from the person you could become. And for the first time in your life, you chose yourself. That's not a breakdown, that's a breakthrough in survival.